Earlier in this section, we played around with animating using the auto keyframes. But what if you want to have more control over how your keyframes function and how your animation actually looks? Well, you can enable something called the graph editor, which is this button right here, which will take your timeline and turn it into something kind of scary. But not at first, because we don't have anything here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my moon. And as you see, we have a couple of keyframes in here, but I want to see them down here in my graph editor. So I'm going to go ahead and lift this up a little bit. And I'm going to turn on the ability to see them by going to this little eyeball here and enabling show animated properties. Now, as you can see, we have a bunch of keyframes in here. Now I can go to this button here and click to show everything that's animated in one nice view. So what we're looking at is really kind of cool. This left side of the graph shows the value. For example, the position at the start of the animation. If it's at the left side of the screen, it will be at a value of 0. And as it moves up, the number will go higher. And of course, this way represents time. So this represents what's happening as far as scale, position, rotation. And this represents what's happening during the course of that animation. Now, as you can see, we have our animating moon, and we can go back to this menu here. We can choose a different menu, and we can choose to edit the speed graph. We can edit the value graph, and you can choose whatever kind of graph makes sense for whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Now, typically, I like the value graph because I can see the value of my object as opposed to the time. But you can go to the speed graph as well and change your properties that way. So let me go back to my value graph, and I go back to this eyeball, and I can show the graph editor set, I can show the animated properties, and I can show the selected properties. So I'm going to go back to selected properties. Let's go ahead and twirl open the moon, go to transform, and click on position. So as we see here, position of our moon, when I scrub the playback head, is represented by, since it's going left to right, the red line here. Whenever it goes up and down, it is going to be the green line. Now, we don't have a blue line because we don't have any 3D in this particular animation. But if we were working in 3D mode, which of course is this little cube here, and let's say we move the moon near and far, we would then have a blue line to indicate the depth or the z-axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this frame here. And I'm going to go back to the very first frame. I'm going to move the value of our moon. And you notice how it's changing over time. All right, on this particular keyframe. So I am moving it along the x-axis by grabbing this value. And I can grab this keyframe and move that along the x-axis as well. And this one, of course, at the end of our animation. So I'm simply changing the value over time. Now, of course, I can also do the same thing with the y-axis, all right, the height. So I'm moving the value and changing the height of the moon at different points in the animation. So I can go ahead and move it up or down myself. So it's a nice way for you to troubleshoot animation and, more importantly, to refine that animation. All right, so let me undo a couple times to get everything nice and neat. Something else I can do when I'm animating is I can change how that animation is occurring. For example, look down here, we see we have the ability to change keyframes to hold frames, linear, and auto Bezier. So let's go ahead and take a look at the hold here. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag select keyframes like so. I can get them all. So I'm going to drag and grab all the keyframes. I'm going to click right here. Now we have this stair stepping. What this in effect does is it takes our animation. Let me go ahead and zoom in. And it gets rid of the nice linear animation. And it turns it into hold frames so that the animation simply snaps to the next location. So imagine you get in your car and you're driving, let's say, to Florida, and you live in New York. Well, you step on the gas and there's no highway. You're just in Florida. Boom, you're there. I mean, so your face is smashed against the windshield and everything because you're right there. So this is what this is doing. So you're in New York, bam, you're in Florida. So this is a nice way, of course, to study animation as well. I'll go ahead and grab these guys again. And I'll turn on the Bezier handles, which gives us a nice linear, smooth animation. You can also enable easing in your animation down here. And as I mentioned earlier, easing simply gives you the way to change how your frames are coming into and out of the keyframes. So let's say, for example, I grab these two keyframes here and I click on one of these options. Look how the curve changed. All right, so I'll undo that and I'll click here again and it will gently smooth that animation out for you. I'll click on this one and you see it changes it again. So you can either speed up the motion of an animation as it leaves, or you can slow it down. A good example of this is if you're animating a spaceship. So it eases off the ground and it speeds up as it jets out of the spaceport. Or it does the opposite. It zooms in, slows down, and lands. And that's what the easing will help you with. All right, guys, so that is a look at the graph editor. It's a very, very powerful feature. So I highly suggest that you study it, because if you intend to do 3D animation in like Maya or Modo, for example, there's also a graph editor there. So understanding the graph editor here will really help you out in other applications.